Interior Paul's inner office. Day.
You are not going to believe this.
The men follow Paul onto the mile. They arrive at the bars and find the mouse sitting on Dell's shoulders. Dell looks up, giggling like a kid at Christmas.
Look, I done tamed that mouse.
What do you see there?
Watch this. Watch what he do. Ain't he something now? He's smart, Mr. Jangles.
Mr. Jangles.
That his name. He was put in my ear.
Meet Michael Jeter. You've seen him before. The short, scrawny, wiry, bald man who most of the time sported a bushy red mustache. Sometimes he sang, sometimes he danced, sometimes he popped up on Saturday morning TV. Throughout his wildly successful career in entertainment, he consistently turned in nuanced and studied performances. He was an expert at playing the affable loser, the pathetic underdog, and every once in a while, he'd make for a perfect, obnoxious, wormy antagonist. These are roles that he played well and often, but they certainly don't define him. You know all those times you've seen Michael Jeter in a film or TV show and said, "Oh hey, I love that guy." Well, this is that guy. Michael Jeter was born in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee on August 26, 1952. His father, William Jeter, was a dentist, and his mother, Virginia Raines, was a housewife who helped raise Michael and his 5 other siblings, 4 sisters and 1 brother. He went to college at the University of Memphis and originally studied medicine. He then became interested in acting, and after college began performing in regional theaters all over Memphis. After some success on stage, actress Christine Baranski referred him to her manager, who then got Michael his first film role in the 1979 big screen adaptation of the hippie musical Hair, directed by Milos Forman. In his first on-screen performance, Michael played a young man named Sheldon who's being drafted into the Army for Vietnam.
Woodrow Sheldon?
Yes, sir.
Everything off, please.
Oh, hey, how would you like that to be your first film role? As if it wasn't nerve-wracking enough to be in front of a camera for the first time, you have to be completely nude.
Woodrow, have you got some kind of problem with your socks?
No, sir.
Then take them off.
Sergeant.
Not much, but hey, it was a feature film by a then up-and-coming director, and the one line I'm sure was enough to get Michael his SAG card. That being said, the first decade of his acting career was slow going. He did a little bit of theater when he was cast in the off-Broadway production of Cloud 9 in 1981. As for film and television, I'll give you the rundown, but trying to find Michael in some of these early projects was like trying to find Bigfoot. He had one audible line in the film Ragtime, also directed by Milos Forman.
You're all trespassing!
Sir, let us see the colors, baby, okay?
You can see his face if you pause at just the right moment. There he is. In the Woody Allen mockumentary film Zelig, he also had one line.
What's brown and white and yellow and has 4 eyes?
Leonard Zelig at the League of Nations.
On his IMDb, it says he was a prisoner in an episode of Night Court, but he didn't have any lines. In fact, I could barely see him. Is that him? He also played a construction worker, no dialogue, in the Tom Hanks comedy The Money Pit. The only substantial role he got in the first half of the 1980s was a cast member of a musical filmed for television called Alice at the Palace. It's a loose, abstract adaptation of the stories of Alice in Wonderland, starring Meryl Streep in the title role. Jeter played multiple roles throughout, including the Dormouse at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. It's a little out there, but it also serves as a decent showcase for Michael's talents. Despite the fact that he had no formal singing or dancing training, Michael did something every once in a while that surprised me. First of all, he's a great singer. And secondly, in this one part, he's performing a dance on point, which is a ridiculously hard ballet move that takes a lot of practice to master. This is the first time we get to see a hint of Michael's deep well of talent as a performer. Now, before continuing with Michael's acting career, I'd like to talk about something I think is important, and that's Michael's look. In my opinion, I think the way Michael looked when he was younger may have hindered him when being cast for parts. Here's what I mean. When Michael was 27 years old, he looked like this. When he was 38, he looked like this. Now pretend you're a casting director. You've never heard of this guy before, you've never seen him before. Your first impression of Michael Jeter is one of 250 headshots that you're sifting through. Which headshot would make more of a first impression? This or this? In my opinion, it's this. It's a look that's easy to understand, easy to swallow in a few seconds. Balding, big mustache, and almost an air of warmth and kindness that comes through in his smile. You can immediately conjure up possible roles for this man to play. The nebbish accountant, the goofy neighbor, the librarian. I know I've talked about this before, but something that I think is fascinating is how actors can grow into a certain look and become even more successful. I think Michael needed some time to grow into his look. His look at 27 is kind of on the fence between two different looks. He's too young to really play roles in his 30s, but his thinning hair makes him look too old to play the younger roles. It reminds me of a quote from 30 Rock. In the first episode of the second season, it's revealed that Jane Krakowski's character has gained weight during the show's hiatus. Alec Baldwin's character sees her and confides in Liz Lemon,
"She needs to lose 30 pounds or gain 60. Anything in between has no place in television."
I can't believe I missed you.
It's harsh, and it's funny coming from Baldwin's no-nonsense character, but unfortunately it's true sometimes. Sometimes the way you look needs to be clearly defined. It would take a few more years for Michael to evolve into what is arguably his signature look. As the 80s continued, his work, slowly but surely, became a little more substantial. He got his first series regular role in a short-lived Canadian series called Hot House.
Hot night in Nurseland?
Yeah, first aid is bed and my night nurse is walking around with pink bunnies for feet.
He had a few scenes in an episode of Crime Story.
Yes, sir.
Don't you think, sir, it's about time you put an end to this farce?
No! It's time we put a stop to the criminal elements in our own government.
Yeah, damn right! And he also booked a guest star on an episode of Designing Women.
Where do you want this?
Over there, Cal. Who is that man?
Calvin Klein. He's no relation to the clothing guy.
However, Michael actually started to lose hope and quit the business for a short period of time around 1987. Here he is on Letterman talking about it.
Say you were not an actor right now, where do you think you would be doing? What would that be like for you?
Well, I banged around New York for a long time, and I did go through a period where things were going terribly badly. And so I decided to drop out of the business for a while, and I taught myself to type, and I became a legal secretary right over here at 45 Rock at a law firm called Rabull McMurray Hewitt Mater and Crystal. And I was about 35 years old, and one day I was shaving, I was looking at myself in the mirror, and, you know, I was 35, and I thought, what can I do that doesn't require my incurring a huge education debt, and it's not going to take 12 years to do, you know, like neurosurgery. For $5,500 and 16 months of school, I can become an embalmer. And so I got this whole plan. There's a school here on 56th Street called the McAllister Institute. I was going to go to the McAllister Institute. I was going to get my embalming license. But then I got a television series, and I had to give it all up.
The Lord works in mysterious ways. But he's usually right.
Yeah, you heard that right. He was thinking about quitting acting and becoming an embalmer. Goes to show you stick around long enough, something can happen. The series that he was referring to was a show called Evening Shade. It ran for 4 seasons, and Michael was in 98 episodes as a series regular. The show starred Burt Reynolds, who played a retired football player who returns to his hometown in Arkansas and becomes the high school football coach. Michael played Herman Stiles, the math teacher of the high school.
Well, Herman, I guess you know a little bit about football, huh?
No. But I've been to some games. I'm starting to pick up the lingo.
Good.
Also, right around the time Jeter got this role in Evening Shade, he was cast in the Broadway musical Grand Hotel. Now, I'm not sure if one job helped him get the other or if it was just coincidence, but either way, 1990 was the year that Michael Jeter finally broke out. His role as Otto Kringelein, a dying bookkeeper who spends his life savings to live his final days in a lavish hotel in Berlin, arguably made him the audience favorite of Broadway that year and won him a Tony Award. Normally, I wouldn't have been able to find footage of his performance, but thankfully, the Tony Awards hold a tradition of actors and singers performing the favorite numbers of that year. So, in 1990, television audiences got to see Michael Jeter sing and dance alongside the star of the show, David Carroll, to the musical number, We'll Take a Glass Together. Now, Jeter mentions that prior to his being cast in Grand Hotel, he had no formal training when it came to singing or dancing. With that in mind, watch this.
We'll spend each moment, yes we will, as it moves us, come my comrade, nip the nectar of the day. Sweet neck sherry, Campari, Scotch whiskey, chartreuse, a cognac, and absinthe frappé. For one more moment in a world gone cold and crass, we'll take a glass together.
Wow, he's phenomenal. You can't take your eyes off of him. Even the more subtle footwork is impressive. Also, something to note is how adept he was at miming. The whole number is performed as if this golden bar in front of them is an actual bar in a hotel lobby, with Carol and Jeter standing on one side. The rest is left to the imagination. Even though Jeter's not actually drinking from a glass, he mimes it so well you'd swear one was in his hand. The way he slowly lifts it as if it was filled to the brim, the way he envelops his big mustache over the imaginary lip, even the way he very carefully places it back down onto the bar and doesn't take his eyes off of it until he's sure it's going to sit there safely and not spill. Which, if you look close enough, he already did earlier. It's all done so well. Later in the broadcast, Michael won a well-deserved Tony Award for Best Actor performing in a musical.
And the Tony Award goes to Michael Jeter, the musical.
Keep in mind, around 3 years prior to this moment, Michael was taking serious steps to quit acting to become a mortician.
I don't know what to say except to everyone who's been any part of this project, my heart goes out to you. If you're the audience, you are my heart. And the only other thing I'd like to say tonight is, if you're out there somewhere tonight and you've got a problem with alcohol or drugs and you can't stop, you think life can't change and that dreams can't come true, then I stand here as living proof that you can stop. It changes a day at a time, and dreams come true. God bless you.
Wow. I didn't even know he had a problem. In all my research, I didn't find any other mention of Michael having a substance abuse problem. Maybe it was in those early days when he was struggling. He wouldn't have been the first. So around the time of Michael's performance in Grand Hotel, his career really began to take off. He nailed a few bigger parts. He was a therapist in the film Dead Bang.
The truth is that you kind of look like Woody Allen.
An audio engineer in the action film Tango and Cash.
What do you want to know?
How were you contacted?
I was contacted by phone. I never saw the guy.
How'd you get him the tape?
I mailed it.
Where to?
I don't remember the address. But I recorded the conversation.
And he had one scene in the early Coen Brothers film, Miller's Crossing.
Give me 100 across and tell him made on the third tonight.
The Tsar won't like it.
Try 50 across.
I'll try. It's another 150 you'll owe him.
Michael did a great job with these roles, but he had all these special talents that were almost going to waste. Thanks to his experience in Grand Hotel, he was a triple threat: singer, dancer, actor. Something great about working on any project in the entertainment industry is that you can pick up certain skills and add them to your resume. It's kind of like how a Highlander absorbs all the power of another Highlander after he defeats him in battle. Okay, maybe that's a dumb comparison. But you never know when these skills might come in handy for future projects. For example, actor Charles Baker played Skinny Pete, a low-level drug dealer, in Breaking Bad. He was usually used as comic relief, and just from the way they made him look, it's obvious that his character had a problem with meth in the past, but we don't get any backstory really. But then, in one scene in the 5th season, we see his character playing the piano.
I had heard one of the writers talking about how they listen to the actors and watch the actors behind the scenes to pick up clues about them that they can use in the writing. And I love to play piano, and I kind of was hoping that somebody would recognize that and go, hey, how can we use that?
And through this simple sequence, we get some hints that maybe he was going to play professionally, or did at one point and threw it all away when he got into the drug trade. My point is, and this may be a no-brainer, but the more skills that you have under your belt, the more jobs you can get, and the richer your characters can possibly be. Now that Jeter had singing and dancing under his belt and people knew it, these talents could be utilized in certain projects, which brings me to one of my favorite roles of his role as a homeless cabaret singer in Terry Gilliam's The Fisher King. In one of the film's best scenes, Bridges, in an attempt to help Williams' character ask someone on a date, recruits Jeter's character as a singing telegram.
I had a dream for guess who, Lydia. It wasn't for her, Lydia. And everything's coming up videos. Everything's coming up videos, but this time for free. For you, Lydia, for free.
No fear, man. No fear. But let's not forget that this is a Terry Gilliam movie, and it needs to go to some darker places before it's finished. Later on, when Bridges is back on top and has his career back, Jeter's character comes into the fold again, and it's heartbreaking.
You gotta move
Jack!
Let's get out of
Jack,
here.
you remember me?
Come on.
Venice!
Hey,
You know
come on,
me,
come
Jack!
on.
Jack, please, can I talk to you, please?
Come on.
Jack, I need
Hey.
to talk. Jack, we spent time together.
Let's go.
Jack, please let me talk.
You know this guy?
Jack, please talk
Out
to
of
me.
here.
Why
Out
won't
of
you
here.
talk to me? Leave me alone.
Out. Out.
After The Fisher King, Michael worked like crazy in films playing all sorts of fun characters. And keep in mind, he continued his job on Evening Shade, getting nominated for Emmys and actually winning one in 1992. What really began to come through in his work was his boundless energy. It's like he's bouncing off the walls in every scene, and he was always playing underdogs. Sometimes you rooted for him. He played an eccentric inventor in Waterworld. His character kind of reminded me of Maurice in Beauty and the Beast. If they had made a live-action version, Michael would have been perfect. He played the head elf in a film called Mrs. Santa Claus, starring Angela Lansbury.
Teddy's vest has satin lining, and the locomotive's brass is shining, and the sparkle and the gloss we attribute to the boss.
And he also played an excitable math teacher in Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit.
I'll help you find it. Just follow me, and I'll show you exactly where it is. Come down here. I know exactly what you mean. When I first got here, one hall looks like another hall, one stairwell looks like another stairwell. Sometimes I'll find myself just stopping dead in my tracks and going, oh, Lord, come to my rescue, come to my aid.
Now that you've gotten an idea for the kinds of roles Michael normally played, let's take a look at a few he played that kind of stray from that. As far as unlikable characters, he played a snobby realty connoisseur in Mousehunt.
So, what do you think a magnificent edifice like this is worth? Properly restored, of course.
Well, his Parma-Charnel house went for $6, but that was 10 years ago, and it didn't have this exquisite molding.
I see. I can't get enough of good molding.
Here he is talking about the danger of drugs in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
A dope fiend refers to the reefer butt as a roach because it resembles a cockroach.
You know, I actually don't know if this character is supposed to be unlikable or not. The movie just feels like one long acid trip anyway, and Michael's really over-the-top performance fits the tone perfectly. And if you want to see him playing a really unlikable character, here he is playing an animal-abusing clown in the Disney film Air Bud.
You flea-bitten mongrel, you're going to the pound! You hear me? You're going to the pound! I hate birthday parties! I hate kids! I hate being a clown!
I've mentioned before that I think actors who are genuinely nice in person really enjoy playing villains. I think Michael had a good time playing this role. Here he is talking about it.
I play Norman Snively, the proverbial bad guy. I'm a terrible animal abuser and opportunist.
Have you been some typecast a little bit?
If I have, it's not the type of character that I'm playing in this film, because usually I'm a very sympathetic, good guy. So this is a bit different and a bit more fun, I think.
Also, every once in a while, Michael would play a role in which he'd have to be an alcoholic. I wouldn't even bring this up if it weren't for the fact that he implied during his acceptance speech that he had a problem with alcohol in the past. Then when I was watching his work, I couldn't help but think about that, and think that maybe he had some previous experiences that colored his interpretation of these roles. And he played them well, just like everything else. He was good at playing the comedic happy drunk.
So now, let's all shotgun a beer, because that's what I think Zach would have wanted us to do. In the name of the good Lord, pop 'em!
The mean drunk.
You know, she ain't just your girlfriend, Arby. I've seen her too. She gets to be my girlfriend too.
And here he is playing a much more three-dimensional alcoholic in an episode of Touched by an Angel.
Rocky, could I have a drink, please?
Ginger ale?
No, give me some stronger, some vodka, whiskey, I don't care, whatever.
Gus, you don't drink?
Just keep pouring, okay?
Alcohol is not the answer, Gus. There's still hope.
No matter what role he ended up playing, Jeter spent the 90s busier than he had ever been. At the same time, though, he was going through some personal turmoil. One thing I haven't mentioned about Michael yet, and something you may or may not know, is that Michael was gay. And there was never a time in his acting career where he was hiding it. He was open from the very beginning and mentions that he's never been to any Hollywood function without a man on his arm. What he did end up hiding for a while was the fact that he had tested positive for HIV in early 1996. He talks about it in a January 1998 issue of a magazine called Pause Magazine, which to this day continues to serve as a resource for the HIV and AIDS community. He talks about how at some point in 1995, he had just come out of a long-term relationship, he was very depressed, and started a number of casual sexual relationships, one of which he contracted HIV from. Later that year, Michael met Sean Blue, who would end up being Michael's partner indefinitely. Michael didn't want to reveal his diagnosis at first because there was a lot to consider, especially during the mid-90s. Keep in mind, by 1995, we had all more or less learned what HIV and AIDS was and how it was spread, but there was still some paranoia floating around about it, considering that less than a decade prior to this, in certain parts of the country, people were ignorantly referring to AIDS as gay cancer. When he revealed his diagnosis, people would ask him really inappropriate questions. How long have you been sick? Is that your partner? Is that the guy you caught AIDS from? And he didn't just get flack from the general public. Even after revealing his disease, he was getting flack from the gay community for not coming out with it sooner. It's like he couldn't win. Michael talks about coming out with his diagnosis. It isn't a question of image. The gay press has it wrong. The question really isn't, should I disclose my status, but will the insurance company put up the bond? How many character actors like me can afford to do that? A good point. After all that was said and done, HIV was a part of Michael, but not a crucial one. He didn't let it define him. He says, "My only interest in talking about this anymore is in doing service, only if it can help other people. I don't like to put it this way, but I'm not a professional faggot. I'm an actor and a gay man, but I haven't made my career as a gay actor. And I'm not going to make a new career as an actor with HIV." Well said. Well into the second half of the 90s, Jeter continued to pop up in film and television, cementing his status as a sought-after, valuable character actor. He worked with Robin Williams again as a mental patient in Patch Adams.
You're a lot fuzzier than my last roommate.
Keeps me warm.
And as a Jew in Nazi-occupied Poland in Jacob the Liar. He played a supporting character in Jurassic Park 3. Unfortunately, he met the same fate that most supporting characters meet when they're in a Jurassic Park movie. Also, I remember him vividly as Mr. Noodle's brother, Mr. Noodle, in the Elmo's World segments on Sesame Street.
Let's ask Mr. Noodle. Thank you, Shay. Oh, look! It's Mr. Noodle's brother, Mr. Noodle.
Hi, Mr. Noodle.
He's awake now. Oh, hi, Mr. Noodle.
How are you doing today?
Oh, Mr. Noodle, how do bugs get from one place to the other?
Mr. Noodle, there's a butterfly. Yay! He did it!
Some bugs can fly. Yay!
And he ended up doing some voiceover work as well. He did a few voices for Nickelodeon cartoons like The Wild Thornberrys.
I didn't know we had a permit to catch that hippo.
It's a fake.
Really? Looks just like a real hippo.
And Hey Arnold.
Easy does it, son.
Oh, don't worry, Dad. I've got it.
Eugene! Are you okay?
I'm okay.
He's okay.
Then in 1999, Jeter played a role that arguably won him the most critical acclaim, and that was the role of Edouard Delacroix in Frank Darabont's The Green Mile. He played a simple-minded prisoner on death row.
Could I have a box for my mouth so he can sleep in here with me?
I notice your English gets better when you want something.
Want to see what else he can do? Watch. Mr. Tango. Want to play fetch? Sur la lay cherche. Play fetch. Watch. You fetch it every time.
That's so smart, Mouse Dale. Like he a circus mouse or something.
Correct. That's just what he is too. He's a circus mouse. And when I get out of here, he's gonna make me rich.
He's so likable and sympathetic that you completely forget that he's a murderer and he's going to be executed eventually. He also does a great job with that accent. The Cajun accent is actually pretty difficult to nail down, and he does it well.
Somebody touch him, he may water in his pants like a little baby.
Dale! I'm going to shut up.
In the behind-the-scenes footage, Jeter mentioned that this was one of the more difficult roles he had to play.
It's been the most difficult emotional work I've ever had to do professionally. You know, because you're playing people who are dealing with last things, the very last things they're ever going to be dealing with. And yeah, it's funny because it's all just make-believe. You know, we're all just pretending anyway. You know, but at the moment that you're doing it, no, it's not funny. It feels real. It's been a gift, a wonderful gift.
Another notable role he had was in the 2003 Western Open Range, directed by and starring Kevin Costner, who Jeter had previously worked with on Waterworld. He played a grizzled old stable owner who helps Kevin Costner and Robert Duvall's characters.
Howdy. Not planning on staying long?
How long it takes to find who we're looking for?
Oh, well, maybe I can help you, gents. I've been here since Harmonville was Fort Harmon, and we still had soldiers chase off Indians. I know everybody in town for miles beyond.
It's really interesting how different he looks by growing a beard. He seems so much older. Kevin Costner talks about working with Jeter in some behind-the-scenes footage.
Michael Jeter really lives in the great tradition of actors like Ward Bond and Walter Brennan. He brought such a flavor. I mean, he's a red hot chili pepper, man. He's cayenne pepper. He really spices up a movie, and those guys recognize that in American cinema depends on that kind of talent coming along, and when it does, you can see that other talent moves towards it. And Michael really, I think, stood for the finest tradition of the supporting man. His talent was just so big. This was a scene that was impromptu on my part. I thought it up, and I created a will that Charlie would leave in case he died, and I thought that I would pass this on to Michael Jeter. Michael immediately understood this kind of last will and testament, and little did we know at the time that we would be losing Michael 4 or 5 months later.
Unfortunately, it's true that Michael Jeter passed away after the filming of Open Range and never got to go to the premiere. The film is dedicated to his memory. And the last film that was released that Michael Jeter acted in was the 2004 film The Polar Express. This film was also dedicated to his memory. On March 30th, 2003, Michael Jeter died of an epileptic seizure. One common misconception that spread like wildfire when he died was, oh, he must have died from AIDS. And that's not just the general public talking. There were professional news organizations that jumped to this conclusion, and some of them even had to backtrack and correct the articles. The truth is that Michael's death had nothing to do with AIDS or HIV. Although Michael lived the later part of his life with HIV, he stayed healthy with medicine. Sean Blue, Michael's partner, was adamant about making sure people knew that Michael died from a seizure. He even posted on IMDb about it. Michael died during an epileptic episode. It had nothing to do with his HIV. I know this because I was his life partner and the one who lived with him, loved him, and found him. Sean Blue. So, what else can be said about Michael Jeter? I guess it depends on how you see him. To me, he's an inspiration not only because of the quality of his work, but because he doubted himself. I know that sounds odd, but the fact that Michael almost gave up is something that is so relatable and human. There are so many actors who arrive at certain points in their lives and say, maybe I shouldn't be an actor. What am I doing? This is crazy. I know it's something I've thought about. There are days when I feel great about my career choice, but every once in a while, I have my doubts. And whenever I do, I have a number of positive thoughts and experiences that I recall. And now, one of them is of a short, unassuming bald man in a tuxedo holding an award in front of an adoring audience, trying his best not to burst into tears, and thinking that 3 years prior to this moment, this same man almost gave it all up. That's inspirational to me. Alright, I know I tend to end on a down note with these episodes, so to wrap things up, I'd just like to play this short clip from a film called The Boys Next Door. It's silly and fun, and it just makes me smile every time. And don't worry about the context of the clip. Thanks for watching.
Around my bed, just a tapping my toes. Before I know what's happened, I'm ready to doze. Got some partners I can count on, called the Boogie Woogie Sheep. I dance myself to sleep. I gently rock by myself across the floor. I turn and then I toss and then I start to snore. My trusty little bugle helps me spread the news that I'm tapping 2 taps and I'm a raring to sleep.